Normally, I'd do an episode on something involving nostalgia and tech memories, especially my own. And don't worry, I'll get back to that. But today I was having a bit of a rough patch, emotionally, not physically. And I decided the best way to get through it would be to talk about how I get through it. This isn't the first time I've had to process a lot of things. So maybe if it helps somebody out there, sit back and listen, and here's how I do it. Here's how I walk the dark path. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It, a podcast about technology, history, and getting myself out of debt. Thanks to Jeff Atwood and the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. It's not really even important what has me down. It's not a person. It's not a place. It's just a situation where I come out after conversations feeling overwhelmed with things that I have to process and things that I have to do across the next bit of time. You would think that a person so comfortable performing in front of others and who has faced off against various entities over the years would no longer possess any sort of faculty for feeling down. That's a lie that a person tells themselves. They observe someone who is productive and upbeat, and it's natural to assume that's the way it is all the time. That they never tire, they never flag, nothing stops them. But that's not life. That's not how life works. It's not that hard to imagine a world where somebody is always at the top of their game, is always feeling great, and is always accomplishing something. And to be sure, I do my absolute best to engineer the processes by which I accomplish things with a consistency and high throughput. But that's just design. That's laying out sandbags. That's providing drainage to a wall. But that does nothing to account for hurricanes, for floods, for rainfall of a regular day being part of your experience. I get phone calls, dialogue, and all sorts of other communications that can come from anywhere. Some of them easily dismissed, some of them the first few steps towards a major concern or priority for me. Emotionally, those need to be worked through, step by step, occasionally step by excruciating step. I'm like everybody else. And I'll say, one of the most complimentary communications I get are people who really lionize what I'm trying to do, saving digital culture or providing access for materials that would otherwise be hard to find. And I take those to heart. But those folks need to realize that it's impossible to maintain full emotional parity via the day. My various medical problems over the years have been public enough that people ask me if I'm okay. And I'm very okay. The heart issue that I made so much public knowledge about was transient. It was a matter of changing lifestyle and taking a new set of drugs, but otherwise did not represent a day-to-day decrease in my ability to function. A small eye issue, well known to people, medically tracked, and with a complete and total set of flowchart to tell me what to do as time went on. Stressing about these things wouldn't help me at all, but occasionally I worry about the contingencies. What if my eye gets worse? What if some other medical malady comes forward? And despair can start to settle. Because these are, even though they're internal medicine, external to your life. If you walk down a sidewalk, you are choosing to walk down that sidewalk. You are not choosing for a car to suddenly go across that sidewalk. You're not choosing to be in an earthquake. It's happening. Very little of what you could have done would have changed that. Those things were going to happen. Your proximity to them is almost random. There's certainly ways that you can be initiating trouble, causing stress, but more often than not, where we start searching for our own personal blame in a situation comes from, perhaps, a reflexive hesitancy to understand that the universe is random. The universe contains multitudes of different forces and actions happening, and you can litigate to yourself the choices you've made in the past that lead to the present. And they can start to solidify, to become stones at the bottom of the river that jam up your life. For whatever it's worth, in my half-century of existence, I've discovered that iterating and reiterating failure does not improve performance. Taking lessons and moving on as quickly as possible, that helps. Sometimes the lesson is as simple as try not to do it again. But other times, it's that you realize you were making a choice for a reason that wasn't even good at the time. Spite, revenge, reaction. And you do your best to consider not doing it again should the opportunity arise. That's happened for me many times. There have been fights I walk away from, fights I don't want to be a part of because they're not going to forward anything. Anybody who compares how I was 5 or 10 or 20 years ago will find a changed person, somebody who maintains some of the personality traits they may or may not like, but the flavor is different, the tone, the timbre, it's completely changed over time. I'm proud of my accomplishments, but I'm also hesitant to lock myself into a known character that I repeat again and again. Maybe my voice talking about this brings you to the conclusion that I hope you have already. You are responsible for your actions, but you're not responsible for the world's actions, the universe's actions. You did not put yourself in charge of gravity. You did not become the czar of unfortunate events. You are not the person in charge. You are not the general manager that the world's bad luck has to speak to. You are a player in the drama, but you are not, by your very nature, the director. Letting go of what you can't control shows up again and again in different philosophical thought. Much of it to provide you with an avoidance of all of the trappings of a stress-filled human existence. And let me be clear, you've got some late nights ahead of you. You've got fights and battles and emotions. You're a human being. All I'm doing is indicating that you should be taking on the realistic world in front of you instead of the idealized world in your head. That's different than a goal, which is an imagined reality. I'm talking about the imagined reality where you believe you are placing your hands on the levers of a massive contraption of fate that is inescapable and in some way your fault and your responsibility. That's not how life is going to work. There are walks you can take. There are people you can talk to. There are endeavors and joys and art and pieces of the world that do not need to be the thing. If I find myself facing down radical change, negative experience, I've learned that I am not committing a sin by focusing on something else. I have dealt with court cases, layoffs, death threats, injuries, medical conditions, and just plain bad experiences. that I could let haunt my entire life, turn myself into the voice for the event that happened years ago, to tell the story over and over again. But that job doesn't pay well. That's not a very productive job. Instead, I realize that all of these things are happening in a continuum of finite reach. And perhaps it's best for me to understand that that particular negative aspect has as its neighbor and companions infinite numbers, massive numbers of positive aspects. Dredging from a beach that feels like it's slowly crashing on you and taking away parts of what you are, to instead sit in the sun nearby and gaze at this destructive force as being the background to the life you're living, may work for you. It works for me. After all these years, I can look back at how I've lived my life with pride. Not as an unbroken record of successes, not as a constantly upbeat and joyful noise, but a cacophonous, unplanned orchestra that has produced harmonies that are heavenly and dirges that are full of darkness and void. But at the end, I walk away. The journey continues. The voices are still there, and the opportunities and the possibilities remain endless. This is Jason Scott Talks His Way Out of It. Thanks to James Bikoyanu, Ernie Hershey, Michael Rubin, Dilip Reddy, Sean Kelly, Trixie the Cat, Martin, Sembiance, Benjamin Guts, Joey Mink, and Anonymous, along with the hundreds of other supporters on Patreon and elsewhere who have been supporting me and helping me get out of debt. I'm doing fine.